Welcome to a bonus edition of the Past Our Prime podcast. And this week we are talking Sooners football. That's right. 50 years ago, Barry Switzer's Oklahoma team wasn't just beating people, they were destroying them. And nobody had a better view of that than our guest, John Brooks. He was the analyst in 1974 for Sooners football before becoming their play-by-play guy a couple years later. But John, 1974, you picked a pretty good time to get behind a mic for Oklahoma football, didn't you?
I really did. I had been around it, and I had been doing a lot of professional hockey, and then I had an opportunity to join the Sooner broadcast network, which was actually owned by Oklahoma News Network. And so I came on as the color analyst with my friend, who was to become even a closer friend. Mike Trips was the play-by-play voice. And I was there for the 74-75 season, and I timed it pretty perfectly because it had been 18 years since Oklahoma had won a national championship. It was a marvelous season, and it was the springboard, although through a very different way, to where I became the play-by-play voice of the Sooners in '76.
Let's start with our man on the cover of SI from 50 years ago, Joe Washington. Archie Griffin wins the first of his two Heismans after the 74 season. Anthony Davis comes in second in the voting, and Washington third. What made him such a special player?
Well, I had a chance to see Joe as a player because I was actually covering the Sooners because I had a 2-year television gig, which interrupted when I went to California to do hockey. But the bottom line was that I had a chance to see him each year. To say the exact thing that made him special, that would be difficult. But for me, the thing that always impressed me was that, first of all, this little guy was playing well beyond the size of the body on the field. Although at times he was so difficult to bring down, he was so elusive that I understood why he liked that little body on the field, because people were having a lot of trouble finding it and getting a hold of it. I think his ability to move quickly, laterally, forward, back, whatever he needed to do on a run or a design play, it just made him something special. And the electricity was, it was just always there.
So Oklahoma finished undefeated, and USC had a loss and a tie, but they split the national championships. I mean, going into the season knowing they couldn't play in a bowl game, they could still win the national championship in one of the polls. Did it motivate them at all to play even more, I guess, more inspired?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, let's face it, they had a very, very good team, and there wasn't much need for motivation with Barry Switzer, because Switzer was the motivator. And if you couldn't play, play under Switzer and be motivated, then you probably weren't going to play any place. He was definitely in the driver's seat when it came to that situation. But obviously, having Joe Washington and an outstanding supporting cast made it, a little bit easier than it might have been other places.
I was just about to ask you, you brought it up very briefly about Barry Switzer. How did he motivate them, and what kind of coach was he? How great was he for the Oklahoma team?
Well, I think the record pretty well says it, with national championships and, double-digit Big Eight conference championships. The thing about Switzer was he was a player's coach. And Barry Switzer probably should be anointed when it comes to African Americans, because at a time where it was still not, quote, popular or accepted to go and recruit a number of African American players, Barry was already doing it. His background as a child growing up in Arkansas, and the book that he wrote, Son of a Bootlegger, his dad a bootlegger, dealt with African Americans at all time. Barry was a guy who related to everybody. And when he began to recruit to the degree that he did, and he began to create the atmosphere and the players and the winning tradition, suddenly other schools are looking around and going, oh, wait a minute, maybe we should revise our recruiting thoughts just a little bit. And I think if you look to any one thing and you talk with players who were with him, not only in the early years, but the last years of his career at Oklahoma, there is an unbelievable bound between Barry Switzer and his past players. And a lot of it is simply because he was an extremely down-to-earth guy. Now, he could get very animated and be very tough, but there was a great bonding there. And I don't want to just wear it to death, but you asked the question, and I think I've given you a pretty good answer as to, the chemistry that was involved between Switzer and his players.
Now, I know that, saying that, we know that Switzer gets a lot of credit in Oklahoma as being a great coach. But do you think he's underrated nationally just for what he did at Oklahoma?
Well, it's a great question, and I'll tell you a little story because, and I don't remember the exact dates, but I can tell you that it was, and you guys can do the research if you want. I can tell you that it was double digits. The number of years after Barry finished before he became a member of the College Football Hall of Fame. Year after year, people were being inducted, coaches were being inducted, whose records were, it was almost laughable on some in comparison to Switzer's record. But he had animated a lot of people, and I myself have witnessed the ability of some people when they're in charge of halls of fame and things like that. If there is if there's a little bit of animosity, that animosity can be directed longer than a lot of people think. And that's what happened to him. And I know one time Barry was asked, Barry, are you frustrated because you're still not in the College Football Hall of Fame? And he just kind of laughed. And I don't remember the exact words, but I'll give you a close paraphrase. He basically said, I'm okay with it. I know who I am. And if nobody else gets it figured out, most important thing is I know who I am and what I did. Now, that's a deep paraphrase, but I could tell you that the meaning of what I just said, that's exactly what he meant. And he was good with it. And then eventually he was inducted many years after he should have been inducted.
It took way too long, though. Way too long.
Scott, I don't even remember the numbers. I don't even remember what year it was. If you guys have that date, we can do some quick math, but I know this, it was much longer than what it should have been.
To me, the greatest Barry Switzer story is, it tells the kind of person he is. When he had Troy Aikman as a quarterback at Oklahoma, and then Aikman gets hurt and can't play, and they switch, he loses the job basically. But he looks out for Aikman, and he actually contacts Terry Donahue to say, I can't play him now because we're doing so well with the other quarterback, but he's so good, someone should be able to use him. How unselfish is that?
Well, unselfish, maybe. I think he realized that it wasn't right for Troy with what they wanted to do. I called those games. I called Troy's first start when he started because Bradley, the starting quarterback, was injured at the University of Kansas. Troy Aikman lost his first collegiate start. And then obviously I called when he went down in the injury that took him out forever. And I remember seeing him after that injury and walking in the coach's office and that walking boot on, asking him how he was doing. He said, well, I'm getting better. And at the time, I'm thinking, well, you're going to be back next year, but there's so many rumors going around already at that point, and Holloway has stepped in, and it's just, it was a situation where the fit was not there. But you're right about Barry. Barry could have been selfish, said, "Oh, please stay. We'll try to work around and everything." But I think he knew, even from the time that he recruited Aikman, that there was a chance that this wasn't going to, pan out the way that it might be. And in the end, the injury to Troy Aikman was the change of his life, because he did go to UCLA. He ends up, being the top draft pick, and he ends up, with a Hall of Fame career in the NFL. Now, would he have had that if he had stayed at Oklahoma, worked in an offense that really wasn't totally him? And I think they would have won. I mean, look, they would have been, they're playing 11 games, I guess, at the time, maybe by then, maybe even 10. But, they're going to be 8-2. They're going to be 9-1, no matter what. But with all of those other things played in place, it's hard to say. And listen, all four of us can go back to points in life and say, wow, this kind of turned it right here. This spot right here turned it for me professionally or personally in your family life, whatever. And on that day, it really changed it for Aikman, because all the scenario that followed put him in the right place, the right scenario at the right time. But to answer your question or your statement about, was it unselfish? Yeah, it was unselfish, but it was also about a coach who, again, cared for his players, saw great talent, and said, look, let's put this guy in the right place.
John, it appears Barry's last year at Oklahoma was 1988. He was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 2001. So it did take 13 years. Now, along the way, he went to the NFL and won a Super Bowl. So he was staying busy doing other stuff for a while. But yeah, it took a while. I'm a Raiders fan, and it's always funny to me that Switzer coached those Cowboys, because he seems more like an Al Davis type guy to me. Am I wrong?
The situation with the Cowboys, it was the perfect scenario. And there's been a lot of criticism by some. And listen, there was a lot of, bad. And when I say bad, you can put bad in capital letters and then put bad about 7 times in a row on the sheet. Bad relationship between have I made it clear? Between
yes.
I think so. Between the media in Dallas and Barry Switzer, there was not a lot of love. A lot of that carried over from OU Texas scenarios during his coaching career. There was a lot of animosity, and there wasn't a lot of love in between. And so when he was named the head coach, there wasn't, not that the media was supposed to become a publicity outlet for him, but let's face it, no matter what market you're in, some markets are tougher than others when it comes to coverage by the media. We all know the reputation of New York, but for the Switzer era, when it started with the Cowboys, it was like a New York atmosphere, and the guy who got the job wasn't liked by the people that were doing the writing, and that was a lot of the situation there. But it was also a perfect transition, I gather. I never was real close to that. I was close enough to know a few things, and I'm very close with the guy who did all of his television shows. I'm also very close with Brad Sham, who couldn't work with Barry and ended up losing the play-by-play job. And another friend of mine took it and had it for 3 years. So I had I was close to a lot of this, but I was still on the fringe. But I do think it was one of those perfect times to bring somebody in. He inherited a good roster. People never gave Barry, I say people, a lot of people gave him credit, but I don't think a lot of the media gave him great credit for the fact that he led this team, to a Super Bowl and had 3 very good years with them.
We all love I love the Cowboys, as does Mark, so we're happy about that.
Well, I want to ask, because I got Mark and Bob and I got Scott, and Scott, I think I'm recognized. Who's the Raiders fan?
Scott.
God, it is you.
That's a big Raiders fan, man.
Mark and Bob.
No, Mark and Bill are Cowboy fans.
I mean,
Scott
I'm sorry, Mark. I'm sorry, Mark and
All
Bill.
right,
I'm
man.
sorry, Mark and Bill. Hey, Mark and Bill. Listen closely, Mark and Bill.
But John,
can you do me a favor?
Sure.
Yeah, Mark and Bill, do me a favor.
Mm-hmm.
Take the temperature of the guys doing the show with us for just a second, will you? He said he was a Raiders fan.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, John. That's exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good call.
Hey, I didn't say Browns. Hey, I prefer to say, what was that line from Dolly Parton? Laughter through tears is my favorite emotion. So
yes, there's a lot of crying.
I like that. I like that. That's good. I bet you had no idea that this podcast was going to go this direction. Okay.
We like to take
right,
left turns and right turns. And John, back when you're in Oklahoma, I went back and I listened to a lot of your broadcasts. You had a saying that I thought was just the coolest. "GEEMINY Christmas." How did that come about? And do you still do it today?
Yeah, I'm basically done. I did some after OU. I did Tulsa for 2 years, University of Tulsa Network. I must have had a little bit of karma. They hadn't been to a bowl game, I think, in 20 or 30 years. And first year I did them, they upset Texas A&M, and they were nationally ranked. They ended up going to Freedom Bowl. You guys ever remember the Freedom Bowl?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Was it
Anaheim? Okay, yeah, it's all out there in your territory.
Anaheim.
So, USC lost to Fresno
I
State.
did exactly. So I did the Freedom Bowl, but GEEMINY Christmas came. I did professional hockey for 28 years. I did professional hockey in 1965 and 66. The Boston Bruins moved their top farm club from Minneapolis to Oklahoma City. And Oklahoma City they completely welcomed professional hockey. I was in Dallas at the time and got a call, said, "Do you want to come back and do Oklahoma City University basketball and the new hockey team?" I said, "Yeah, I'm coming." And I'd seen one hockey game in my life, and that was either an exhibition game or a minor league game, I think maybe in Baltimore. I came back and I got a great break because Harry Sinden, who went on to be in the National Hockey League Hall of Fame and led the Bruins both as a coach and a GM, he was the coach of Oklahoma City. He took me under his wings, and I had a 2-week course in learning the game. And I was weird because I was from the Southwest and I could do hockey. And I had a very, very successful career, had a couple of chances to go to the NHL and fouled up both of them. But bottom line was, it was NHL hockey then because there were only 6 teams in the NHL, and everybody that played on those Blazers teams, they ended up going, all of them, full roster, 18 players in a dressing room after a championship in the Central Hockey League, all 18. When expansion came in 60, after 66, 67 season, everybody went to the NHL. They had careers of averaged about 7 years. What I'm getting to is that in all this hockey, one night I was a shot from the point, and he had hit the crossbar, and I said, "It hit the post! GEEMINY Christmas! Oh, so close!" And the next thing I knew, people were coming up and they were saying, "Wow, man, you got excited on that GEEMINY Christmas." I said, "Yeah." So things would go on. There'd be exciting moments, there'd be a score, etc. Well, then when I started doing football, it just carried over. But I think this was an interesting story, guys, because Oklahoma State fans, they couldn't stand me. I was the voice of the Sooners, but and people would say, all he does is say GEEMINY Christmas. So I got tired of hearing it. And so one year at the start of the season, my statistician, I said, I said to Bill, I said, Bill Hurley, you got one job that's more important than anything. And I don't want to know the answer until the season's over. Tired of people saying all they hear is that. The reason they heard it was because back in those days, you know, if there were 2 games televised for the Sooners, it was a miracle. So everybody listened on the radio. You know, we were on like 5 times a year. We were on the Armed Forces Network, and Oklahoma had the second largest radio football network in the nation. The only one larger was Notre Dame, and there were 70 stations on the network, and it stretched from D.C. to Los Angeles. 11 states, coast to coast, 70 stations. But everybody thought all I said was Jiminy Christmas. So I said, okay, that's your deal. Don't tell me. Comes to the last game of the season, and on the air, I say, I think it was like on a pregame show. I said, I gave Bill a job. I said, or it's on the postgame show. I said, I gave Bill a job. I said, Bill, I said, how many times did I say Jiminy Christmas during the season? He said, what do you guys think? There were 11 games. How many times do you think I said it? Now, everybody thought I said it a lot. Okay.
I'll say 11.
I averaged twice. No, I averaged twice. I said it 21 times in 11 games that season.
Wow.
21 times. You would have had people thinking that, you know, on every other play. But I was I was selective. And believe me, when Marcus Dupree arrived, I have to admit, that year there were more Jiminy Christmases than there had been in other years. Because when Marcus went on that string and on you know, the 30-30, the greatest player who never was.
Right.
I'm on there with 7. I'm there on that show with 7 calls, and it was 7 straight games where Marcus went. Listen to this one: 7 straight games, 60 yards or more. 7 straight games he had a touchdown, 60 yards or more.
Oh my God.
God.
One of them was an 80-yard punt return against Colorado. All the others were cross country. The first one was against Texas, and well, like I said, they all ended up on the 30-30 show. But that one, of course, kind of started it. But I promise you, when Marcus scored on those, there was a Jiminy Christmas. Yeah, for sure there was a Jiminy Christmas. So I had a few more when Marcus was playing. Yeah.
You know, I look at the numbers from that 1974 Oklahoma Sooners team, and it's just insane. I mean, 3 wins by 60 points or more, 7 by 30 or more, 3 shutouts. It's crazy. If you guys could have played USC that year, I'm assuming you'll say you would have won, but how close of a game would it have been? Because it's a shame the year before USC and Oklahoma did play the Coliseum,
right?
Yeah, but not in 74.
Yeah. You were asking me what would it have been like?
Yeah, what would have happened had they met in 70 if they could have played, you know, in 74 after the season?
Well, no, I mean, I suppose you were asking the USC guys saying, well, I'm pretty sure the Trojans would have beat them because they should have beat them before. And you're asking the OU guy who didn't do the play-by-play but did do the color and wasn't in the booth but listened to the 73 game. I got to believe that, I mean, I really have to believe, trying to be impartial, I have to believe that Oklahoma would have won. I was a little dramatic there. You guys thought for a second I was going to say Southern Cal, didn't you?
Yeah.
You played that very well. Yes,
Yes.
very well.
Yes.
That's great. I wish we'd have been on Zoom because I would have liked to see the expression on all 3 of your faces. But, I bet I'm seeing 2 eyebrows go up and a forehead, a little bit of a furrow, and that look. Oh, here it comes. And then I flipped it on you. Right?
Hey, John, you mentioned you did hockey, you did basketball, you did football. I believe you started by doing a radio show in 1958 with legendary Sooners coach Bud Wilkinson, and you end up being inducted in the Oklahoma Broadcasters Hall of Fame. What was that like?
Well, it was wonderful. I mean, if you're talking about the Hall of Fame, it was Morris. I'm very appreciative. It's something that, they only induct one person a year. Now, when I was inducted, they inducted 3 that year, and the next year they went back to 2, and then they went to 1. But there's not a whole lot of people in there. And Kurt Gowdy's in there, a name way, way from the past. You ready for this? Gene Autry is in the Oklahoma Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Okay? All right. But you talk about the Bud Wilkinson story, and a guy that all 3 of you definitely know and still is a wonderful, wonderful friend of mine. We were students together at the University of Oklahoma. We worked for a legendary sports information director, Harold Keith, who basically wrote the book for sports information directors across the country during his career. I was a student assistant. Ross Porter is who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Who obviously
wow.
Ross and I were very good friends, still are good friends. We still communicate many, many times during the course of the year. And so Ross and I were 2 of 3 student assistants for Harold Keith. You'll like this one, guys. James Jones was the other one. These are 3 young college students, sophomores, juniors, seniors, okay?
Uh-huh.
That's the staff that works as student assistants for Harold Keith. We know what Ross Porter went on to do.
Uh-huh.
We know what I went on to do. You guys know what James Jones went on to do?
Basketball.
I'm off target. I'm going to get back to the Wilkinson thing.
Is he a congressman?
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
All James Jones did was he got into politics a little bit. He was a U.S. representative from Tulsa for many years. He was a Democrat. I can promise you, Russ and I are Republicans, okay? But we all got along together. He was a Democrat. He just happens to be the Democrat that when LBJ took office, he became the chief of staff for LBJ during his entire reign.
Wow.
So he did very well for himself.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good lineup of 3 young men who, and I told everybody, I said, oh, I was so far in 3rd place you couldn't find me.
Not in our mind.
Yeah.
You got Jimmy, for God's sakes, he's in the White House.
So we do a little segment here on the show, a trivia segment called 50-50. So I'm going to give you a 50% chance of getting this question right. Can
I make a prognostication?
Yes.
Got it. Can I make a prognostication?
Sure.
I am so bad at this. If you give me 10 of these and I get 30%, you will have to send me some very, very nice gift. Okay. So don't give me 10. I don't want you to have to send
one.
me
You get one only.
I get 1. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
This will be easy.
Here we go.
Okay. So you remember Lucille Ball, very popular actress, had I Love Lucy, and then she had a bunch of series after that. The Lucy Show, Here's Lucy. True or false? In an early 70s Here's Lucy episode, the episode centered on the USC Oklahoma football game.
Well, I'll say yes.
You are correct.
Look at that.
1973, September of 73, I think about 5 days before they actually played the game at the Coliseum, they did an episode about them getting tickets to go to the game. And of course, who gives them tickets on the 50-yard line? O.J. Simpson, who was in the episode.
Oh, wow.
And,
Wow.
I'll give you one other trivia question. The price of those 50-yard line seats, according to this episode, was $6.50.
Oh my God. What a great story. That's the 7-7 game too. Yeah.
Right. And what they did is they actually aired it the week before, like on a Monday night, and the game was played on Saturday because USC was number 1, Oklahoma was 8 in the country, and it was this really big game in 73.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was huge. Yeah. I remember listening. Mike Trips did the game. Later on, guys, everything flipped. Mike left as the voice of the Sooners for 1 year in '77. I came in. He lasted a year. '78, I took over, and after 1 year with my color guy, who went on to go to ABC News and Sports in New York, John Snyder, said, "Well, we need a new color guy," and I said, "Let me talk to Mike Trips." I said, "I don't know if he will. I mean, I did the color with him. I'm not sure he'll want to do it." I broached the subject to Mike, and Mike said, I never even got through the first part of the question. He said, "Yeah, I want to do it with you." And we had 11 great years together. So it was good.
You know, John, I know you
Well,
retired at one point a few years back, and the quote I read was, "Worst decision I ever made in my career." And after talking to you for the past 40 minutes, I can see why. You're just a great storyteller, and you've got so much still to share. So, John Brooks, Hall of Fame announcer, Hall of Fame man, I want to thank you, John, for spending some time with us on the Past Our Prime podcast.
thank you, guys. It was my pleasure. I learned a lot today. This is good.
Before you go, could you give us one more GEEMINY Christmas?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. You ready?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
All right. Here we go. Sooners to the line, 3rd and 5. Here's the pitch outside. Marcus Dupree on the corner. He's at the 50. He's to the 45. The 40 catch a man, breaks the tackle. He's at the 30, 35. Goodbye, Marcus. The 10-5. Touchdown, Oklahoma. G-Money Christmas.